Okay, so today we're going to dig into something that might seem a little backwards at first, why the smartest people you'll ever meet can often sound the least sure of themselves. It's this idea of the eloquent uncertainty of a truly brilliant mind.
Let's just jump right in with a question. You've been there, right? In a meeting, a classroom, maybe even at a family dinner. Why is it that the loudest person, the one who sounds the most certain, is the one we so often assume is the smartest in the room?
Well, here's the thing. There's this paradox where some people will state their opinions like they're absolute facts, while the folks with real deep knowledge are often the ones saying, well, maybe, or it's probable that. But what if that's not doubt? What if that's actually what high-level thinking sounds like?
To really get this, we have to understand that the most intelligent minds, well, they just process the world differently. It really all comes down to thinking in probabilities.
So this is the key. When you hear someone smart using language that sounds a little hesitant, it's not because they don't know the answer. It's because they see the whole picture, a world that isn't just a straight line, but this incredibly complex web of possibilities and details that most of us just don't see.
It really boils down to two completely different ways of thinking. On one hand, you've got certainty thinking. It's very black and white. This will work. Simple. But on the other hand, you have probabilistic thinking. It doesn't even ask, will it work? It asks, what's the probability it'll work? It sees all the shades of gray, all the different ways things could play out. And that's where brilliance lives.
Once you start thinking in probabilities, it almost forces you to become aware of all the things you don't know. And that brings us to our second point, the incredible power of just saying, I don't know.
There's actually a term for this, and honestly, it's a superpower. It's called intellectual humility. And it's not about being timid or lacking confidence. No, it's an active, very honest awareness of where your knowledge ends, of the real limits of your own expertise.
This completely reframes how we should think about intelligence, right? The real mark of a genius isn't just how much stuff they have crammed in their brain, it's having a super clear picture of the edge of that knowledge. Knowing where that boundary is, that's a feature, not a bug.
So, if this is such a critical skill, why don't more of us have it? That question leads us straight into what you might call the schooling trap. Because it turns out, being really successful in school early on can actually stop us from building this crucial intellectual muscle.
Think about it. For a lot of really bright kids, it goes something like this. School is easy. You get good grades without having to try too hard. So naturally, coasting just becomes your normal way of doing things. But that means your effort muscle, that mental grit you get from wrestling with a problem you can't solve right away, it never really gets a workout. And then, bam, you hit a real-world challenge that doesn't have a simple answer, and you realize you don't have the tools to handle it. And that can be a pretty jarring experience. For a huge number of people, that first time they truly feel the limits of what they know, the first time they have to say, I have no idea, and really, truly mean it, doesn't happen until they're way past graduation, out in the messy real world.
All right, let's pull all these threads together. Let's talk about what brilliance actually sounds like and maybe recalibrate how we listen for it.
So, here's the new reality. That super confident, absolute language, sometimes that's a red flag for a simplistic view of the world. But that hesitant language, the maybes, the probablys, that often signals a much deeper, more realistic understanding. Admitting I don't know isn't weakness. It's a sign of real strength. And maybe the biggest takeaway of all, uncertainty isn't something to be afraid of. It's the starting line for every single important discovery.
So what's the point of all this for you? Well, you can think of it like this. You've just been handed a decoder. It's a new way to listen, a filter that lets you see past all the loud, surface-level confidence and actually hear the substance underneath.
And that leads me to my last question for you. The next time you're in a conversation and you hear someone say, it's possible, or you hear that little bit of hesitation in their voice, are you going to write it off as a weakness? Or are you going to lean in a little closer and listen for the wisdom that's almost certainly hiding right inside it?